Your child just interrupted you mid-sentence for the 5th time today. Or maybe they refused to hug their grandmother at the door. Or perhaps they saved their absolute worst behavior for the moment you walked in after work. And if you're like most parents, you feel embarrassed, frustrated, maybe even like you're failing because your child seems ruder around you than anyone else. But what if I told you that's not rudeness? What if those behaviors that make you cringe are actually proof that your child feels safer with you than with anyone else in the world? Here's what most parents don't realize, and what research on attachment and child development has proven repeatedly. Children don't show their worst behavior to people they don't trust. They show it to the people they trust most. According to Dr. Gordon Neufeld, a developmental psychologist who has spent over 40 years studying attachment, children instinctively save their most unfiltered, challenging behaviors for their primary attachment figures because that's where they feel psychologically safe enough to let their guard down completely. A study published in Developmental Psychology tracked children's behavior across different environments and found something fascinating. Children showed significantly more emotional regulation and compliance with teachers, caregivers, and extended family than with their own parents. The researchers initially thought this indicated better relationships with non-parents. They were wrong. Further analysis showed this was actually a marker of secure attachment with parents. Children who felt most secure at home showed the biggest behavior gap between home and other environments. Think about it from your own adult experience. Where do you let yourself completely fall apart? Where do you complain, vent, cry, or act in ways you'd never show publicly? With the people who feel safest, right? Your child is doing the same thing. The behaviors you're interpreting as disrespect or poor parenting are often signs that you've created exactly what every child needs. A relationship so secure they can be authentically themselves, even when that self isn't pretty. Today, we're walking through 5 specific behaviors that look rude on the surface, but actually signal deep trust and secure attachment. These aren't excuses for genuinely disrespectful behavior or reasons to allow everything, but understanding what these behaviors really mean will completely change how you respond to them and how you feel about your parenting. If you're tired of feeling like you're doing something wrong when your child acts worse around you than anyone else, subscribe to the Parenting Blueprint right now, because what you're about to learn will flip your entire perspective on those frustrating daily moments. The first rude behavior that actually means your child feels safe with you is one that drives parents absolutely crazy, especially when you're trying to have an adult conversation. The first rude behavior that actually means your child feels safe is constant interrupting and demanding immediate attention. Your child barges into conversations, talks over you, can't wait their turn, and acts like whatever they need to say is more urgent than anything else happening. In public, this feels mortifying. You're trying to teach patience and social skills, but your child seems incapable of waiting even 30 seconds. Here's what research tells us is really happening. Dr. Edward Tronick at the University of Massachusetts conducted studies on what he calls bids for connection. Children make these bids constantly, attempting to engage their caregivers for emotional connection, not just practical needs. His research found that children make significantly more connection bids with their primary attachment figures than with other adults, because they trust those relationships can handle the demand. A study from the University of Virginia found that children interrupt parents an average of 3 times more frequently than they interrupt teachers or other authority figures. The researchers found this wasn't about respect or discipline, it was about relationship security. Children who felt most secure in their attachment interrupted most because they had absolute confidence their parent would eventually respond, even if not immediately. Think about what interrupting really signals. Your child believes that what they have to say matters to you. They trust that you'll listen eventually, even if you ask them to wait. They're so secure in the relationship that they're not afraid pushing boundaries will damage it. Research shows that children who are anxious about attachment actually interrupt less because they're trying to be good enough to maintain connection. The second rude behavior is refusing to perform for relatives or comply with social demands like hugging, saying hello, or showing off skills. Your mother-in-law asks for a hug, and your child hides behind you. A family friend asks them to play the piano piece they've been practicing, and they refuse. Someone asks about school, and they go silent. And you feel embarrassed because it seems like your child has no manners. But here's what's actually happening. Dr. Laura Markham, who researches respectful parenting, found that children who are given autonomy over their bodies and social interactions show stronger boundary-setting skills and lower vulnerability to peer pressure and inappropriate adult attention later. When your child refuses to hug on command, they're exercising bodily autonomy. When they won't perform, they're maintaining control over their own presentation. Research published in the Journal of Child Sexual Abuse found that children who were taught to comply with adult social demands regardless of their comfort showed significantly higher vulnerability to boundary violations. Children who were supported in saying no to uncomfortable but socially expected interactions developed stronger protective instincts and were more likely to report inappropriate behavior. Your child's refusal to perform isn't rudeness, it's healthy boundary awareness. And the fact that they feel safe refusing with you present means they trust you'll protect their autonomy even when it's socially awkward. The third rude behavior that actually signals safety is acting significantly worse with you than with other adults. Teachers report your child is delightful at school. Grandparents say they're so well behaved during visits. Other parents compliment their manners at playdates. But the second you appear, your child transforms into a whining, demanding, emotional mess. And you wonder what you're doing wrong that everyone else seems to have figured out. Here's the truth that research reveals. You're not doing something wrong. You're doing something profoundly right. Dr. Tovah Klein, who directs the Barnard College Center for Toddler Development, explains that children show their most challenging behaviors to the people they trust most, because those relationships feel safe enough to fall apart in. Her research found that children who maintain perfect behavior across all settings often show signs of insecure attachment and higher anxiety. A study published in Child Development tracked children's stress hormones throughout the day and found something remarkable. Children who held it together at school or other settings showed elevated cortisol levels that only decreased when reunited with primary caregivers. The behavioral deterioration parents witnessed wasn't manipulation or poor discipline. It was necessary emotional release after hours of self-regulation. Think about your own adult life. You maintain professionalism at work, politeness with acquaintances, and composure in public. Then you get home and suddenly every small frustration feels enormous. You're not a different person. You're finally in a space safe enough to stop performing. Your child is doing exactly the same thing. When they save their worst behavior for you, they're telling you that you're their safe space for authentic emotional expression. The fourth rude behavior is being brutally honest about things most children learn to be polite about. Your child announces that dinner tastes bad. They tell you your singing is terrible. They inform guests that their gift is boring or that they smell weird. They point out when you've gained weight or gotten older, and you're mortified by their complete lack of social filtering. But research on child development shows this brutal honesty is actually a positive developmental sign. Dr. Paul Harris at Harvard University studied children's understanding of truth-telling versus politeness, and found that children who felt most secure in their attachments were actually slower to adopt white lies and social filtering, because they had less anxiety about authentic expression damaging relationships. A study from the University of Toronto found that children around ages 4 to 7 go through a phase where they're learning social conventions about polite dishonesty. But children in the most secure attachments resist this longer. They've learned through experience that honesty doesn't threaten their important relationships, so they see less need for social filtering with trusted adults. Your child's blunt observations aren't meanness. They're trust that honesty won't cost them your love. They haven't learned yet that some truths are better left unsaid, partly because with you, they haven't needed to perform or manage your emotions with careful social scripts. The fifth rude behavior that actually means your child feels safe is ignoring you in public, but becoming intensely clingy at home. At the park, your child runs off without looking back, while other kids check in with their parents constantly. At birthday parties, they barely acknowledge your existence. But at home, they follow you to the bathroom, need you for everything, and can't seem to function independently. It feels backwards, like they care more about impressing strangers than respecting you. But here's what attachment research reveals about this pattern. Dr. Mary Ainsworth's groundbreaking strange situation studies found that securely attached children show something called secure base behavior. They use their primary caregiver as a launching point for exploration, confident enough in the relationship that they don't need constant check-ins to ensure the connection remains stable. Research from the University of Minnesota followed children for decades and found that those who showed the most independence in public settings with parents present, combined with the most dependence in private settings, demonstrated the healthiest attachment patterns. This wasn't contradiction. It was secure attachment functioning exactly as it should. Public independence showed confidence in the relationship's stability. Private dependence showed trust in the parent's availability for genuine needs. Think about what this behavior really indicates. In public, your child is so secure in your presence and availability that they don't waste energy monitoring the relationship. They trust completely that you're there if needed. At home, they can finally drop all the independence they performed all day and return to their secure base for emotional refueling. Other children who constantly check in with parents in public may actually be showing anxious attachment, not better behavior. So what do you do with this information? First, recognize that these rude behaviors aren't signs you're failing. They're signs your child feels psychologically safe enough to be authentic, to express needs, to set boundaries, to release emotions, and to trust the relationship can handle their worst moments. That's not rudeness. That's secure attachment. Second, you can still teach social skills and manners without shaming these underlying needs. You can say, "I hear you have something to tell me, and I'll listen as soon as I finish this conversation." Instead of, "Stop interrupting, that's rude." You can say, "You don't have to hug anyone you don't want to." You can wave or high-five instead of forcing compliance. You can acknowledge, "I know you held it together all day at school. It's okay to fall apart with me," instead of punishing after-school meltdowns. The goal isn't to allow genuinely disrespectful behavior. It's to understand what's driving these behaviors so you can respond to the need underneath while still teaching appropriate expression. Research consistently shows that children who feel understood develop better self-regulation than children who are simply punished for behaviors adults find inconvenient. Here's the bottom line that every parent needs to hear. If your child acts worse around you than anyone else, if they interrupt constantly, refuse to perform, fall apart after holding it together, speak brutal truths, and seem to save all their most challenging behaviors for you, it doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means they trust you more than anyone else in their world. They know at a deep, instinctive level that your love isn't conditional on perfect behavior, that your relationship can handle their authentic self, and that you are their safe space in a world that demands constant performance. That's not a parenting failure. That's exactly what secure attachment looks like in real life, in real families, with real children who trust their parents enough to be imperfectly, authentically themselves. If this video changed how you see your child's challenging behaviors, subscribe to The Parenting Blueprint for more research-backed insights that help you understand what's really happening beneath the surface. The behaviors that embarrass you in public might actually be the greatest compliment your child can give you. Proof that you're their safe person. And that's worth celebrating, even when it's inconvenient.